live. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. I'm one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. For any of our listeners who are wondering why we're going an hour early, the FCS National Championship is kicking off at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So I didn't want to miss that. I want to be able to watch that, Blake. Are you gonna tap in, or is it not in your realm of interest?
It's not in my wheelhouse for tonight. I got to admit. Now, I mean, if I can have it on in here in the studio, but I'm not in reference to diving in. I got so much we got to get to. You know, the holidays. There's a lot to catch up on tonight for our show at 7 p.m.
That's fair.
And we have to get to, you know, we're actually basically what we're talking about tonight on a national scale is ironically not because I pretty much have to, is basically what we have to do for our LSU show later tonight. So, I mean, yeah, I'll keep an eye on it, but I got a lot of stuff we got to get here to tonight.
Well, you're going to be missing out on some real ground and pound, real football. It's going to be a lot of running the ball. There's going to be a lot of quarterbacks runs. There's not going to be a lot of throwing. Montana State versus North Dakota State for anyone who's interested in that. But this is, of course, an FBS show. There's a lot that we're going to discuss today. I'm excited to potentially gain a little bit more ground on you in game picks, which I'm not going to come back on you, but we've been inching a little bit closer these past couple of weeks.
You have been inching one game at a time. I'll give you that. But there is going to be a new champion as the season rolls on here. It will be your boy. And speaking of championships, we will get to game picks tonight. We'll look at both semifinal games and give our final predictions here, Joe.
Yes, makes more sense why we're doing it today instead of Wednesday. I think a lot of people can kind of guess which direction we're leaning for both of these. I found it funny. I saw a comment that had pointed out that you were giving some fair coverage to Notre Dame, but that is going to change today. Spoiler alert.
I don't think it changes.
Well, you'll be given fair coverage, but you're still picking against them.
What did I literally tell you in the text? Pick one. The only reason I said that I went, and we'll spoil it here. The only reason I said I was going with Penn State is because you went with Notre Dame. So we can have the debate.
Okay.
If you went with Penn State, I was going to go with Notre Dame. Do you want to go
with
Penn State?
I'm not going with Penn State because I'm not picking against my team. I did that last round, and I'm going to continue doing that.
Well, I think it's going to be a good game. The question becomes ultimately here, which we'll discuss, can Penn State run the ball?
Right. I mean, huge for that.
Yeah, it's going to be massive. And I do think that they have a better rushing attack than Georgia that can ultimately challenge them more offensively than what Georgia was able to do. Joe, we'll talk about some of the teams that lost last week, some things that they need to fix. Georgia, Arizona State, Boise State, Oregon. Mainly we'll spin on Georgia and Oregon here because I don't think Arizona State and Boise State can do anything to become a real national contender.
Not Boise State. It was Tennessee was the other one.
Oh, excuse me, Tennessee.
Yeah,
why did I say Boise? I don't know why.
Yeah, we're not. Well, that was why I deliberately to avoid the confusion there. I deliberately avoided Boise State because there's no Genty. They're not winning a national championship.
Well, and I think the same thing for Arizona State. But
yes,
we'll talk about Tennessee, Oregon, Georgia, mainly what they need to do to get back into the playoff. And maybe at the end of here, maybe an early 2025 look. Joe, I'll ask you the question here at the end. Is there a team, and I know that we're not even out of 2024 season technically yet, is there a team that you look at right now just kind of on its surface that you might want to be on the lookout for?
Well, the easiest one to turn to that we talk about every single offseason is Oregon. The year-by-year step in progression and improvement has been noticeable.
Quinn Ewers' turnovers aren't, or maybe they are.
No, they definitely are back. They definitely are. They haven't left.
Yeah, they certainly have not left. That is for damn sure. So, Joe, let's get into this. So, look, 2 semifinal games are upon us before the season wraps up here, and we've already broken down twice what we think of this game. Now it's time for us to come in here and pick our winners. Let's go to the first game here, but I got to admit, 117-40 is a damn good number. But you have a really damn good number. You're 109-48. So just throwing it out there, the both of us had a really, really, really good season here when it comes to pick'ems.
Yes, I'm double checking. No, the math's correct there this time.
Yeah,
I finally fixed the math.
Yeah, the math is correct.
Yes, we did pick very well, especially in our playoff brackets, which I think deserves a lot of praise. Like we've only had a couple of picks wrong throughout this playoff stretch. I think. No, actually, I think I've been. Am I tripping here? I think I've been perfect so far, and you've only had 2 wrong, and that's why I've closed the gap a little bit.
Yeah, and I kind of been a little bit lenient on some of these playoff picks because there's no way that you could come back.
Are you trying to say you're trying to make me feel better? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm just saying I went for an underdog.
Okay. All right.
All right.
I see how
I mean, there's no way you can catch me. I mean, there's a new winner in the clubhouse here. I'm going to take my victory lap. But in reference to the first game, Notre Dame, Penn State, Orange Bowl, Miami, Florida, I'm going with Penn State. You're going with Notre Dame here.
Yeah, I'm again, I've said this before. I am sticking with my team. I'm going to continue to pick them. But this game is a very winnable matchup on either side, but for Notre Dame especially. I think that this presents a challenge for Penn State, knowing that James Franklin in these highly contested, tight situations has not always been successful. I think that Marcus Freeman showed the way that he coached, the way that he prepared his team against a Kirby Smart-led Georgia team, a situation that many would have expected that Marcus Freeman could have been in and over his head. Just like we lauded Dan Lanning for this year taking that step forward, Marcus Freeman took that step forward at the end of the year. I think that the edge for me between the two of them is for Marcus Freeman over James Franklin, and especially, though, just from a matchup standpoint, I think that Notre Dame's defense, especially their secondary, is too difficult of a matchup for Penn State trying to move the ball through the air. This is going to be low scoring. It's going to be both of these teams trying to run the football, trying to gain ground in any way possible by running the rock, but both are going to have problems throwing the ball. I give the edge to Notre Dame, knowing that Riley Leonard is the slightly better athlete and is going to be able to extend plays with his legs if his receivers are not getting open. So give me the Fighting Irish here.
I've told you this. I said it last night. I'll say it again here just for everybody that's listening who said, well, Blake, it just, of course he picked Penn State. I told you it's a coin flip, and then the only reason is so that we could have the debate here. Would not be shocked in the slightest if Notre Dame finds a way to win here.
Yeah.
Not even remotely close. There is something interesting here that I'm trending, though, that I want to make sure that Notre Dame can clean up, and why I'm not 1,000% sold that they can win, or not that they can win, that they will win. Your issues in the red zone, converting red zone trips into 7 is concerning for me. Very concerning. And you have been throughout the season very special at converting in the red zone. Now, when you're facing better opponents, better teams, you've had issues there. The one time you got in, basically the defense generated the points for you, and the special teams generated those points for you. The play action pass that you hit in the back of the end zone, great call by Mike Denbrock. I understand it's your style, but there's going to have to be times when there's an offense that gets rolling a little bit that you cannot rely on your offense only generating you 7 points. Just, it's not going to work. So I look at Penn State and say, what do I felt like I saw a matchup between two really good opponents when they faced off against Georgia. I just think that Penn State could, because of the quarterback situation, move the ball a little bit better to keep it closer than what we saw from Georgia. Just Drew Aller and this team with Singleton and with Tyler Warren and the boys, are they able to generate more points other than the 7 that we saw from Georgia? I think it's going to be very close. And here's not so much of a hot take. If Penn State can run the ball moderately well, I'm not saying that they run all over them, moderately well, I think it's going to be a good advantage for them. Georgia could not run the ball. Georgia, I went and looked at this up today. The scoring drive for Georgia, the touchdown, they had a run for 12 yards, a run for 5 yards, a run for 4 yards, a run for 11 yards, a run for 12 yards. The reason that they scored a touchdown is because they found ways to run the football. I think that Penn State can find ways to run the ball, which will make this close. Here's my ultimate thought process on this. Whoever has the ball last is going to win it. Or whatever defense can find a way to get a turnover in any quarter, in any situation, is going to find their way. Now, if it comes to a turnover battle, I'm going to lean Notre Dame here. I do think that both of these teams are very even. Different in how they do things, but even. I go with Penn State, Joe, just in the sense of that I think that I don't know, man.
I think you bring up
words. I don't know who to pick. I really don't. I think it's that even.
This game can go in a number of different ways, and I think you brought up an interesting angle that is in line with what I brought up at the end there with Riley Leonard. If this comes down to quarterback play, it's either going to be Riley Leonard extending things with his legs and his receivers not getting open, or the pocket breaking down and him having to escape pressure like he did against Georgia, like he did against Indiana, like he's done all season long. And that's what wins Notre Dame the game. And then the inverse of that is if Drew Allar is sitting in the pocket and his receivers are in tight coverage, he's able to just deliver the ball in really tight windows because he's got special arm talent. If he steps up and plays to his potential, that's how Penn State wins. It's two completely different paths, but clear importance for both on quarterback play and overall performance from the both of them. That, I think, is what is going to be the hugest catalyst in this for the outcome.
Let me say this. I don't trust Penn State offensively right now. I mean, I saw what they did to Oregon. And I think Notre Dame is better than Oregon defensively, especially defending the run.
Yeah.
But it's not as if against Ohio State, Joe, when the game was on the line, that Drew Allar didn't make those really big throws. I mean, Joe, they got to the 1 yard line. They took the ball out of his hands. They can't get in from the 1 yard line. He goes 80 yards to get you to the one, and then you start running the football. I've seen him in crunch situations against really good front sevens. Joe, I got to be real with you. We've seen Penn State's O-line run the ball in moments against decent or moderately good defensive lines in front sevens. I know that they protected it, Drew Allar well. I look at what happened in an Ohio State game. Brother, the drive that could have led them to win the game, he literally went 4 for 5 on the drive. Now, Tyler Warren had 3 touches on the drive, and you better contain him. You 1,000% better contain him. If you don't, you're going to get beat. I promise you. He is that kid is special, man. You're right. It can go in a variety of different ways. You brought up an interesting point here, though. When teams are even, what overtakes them in winning football games? What is it? It's the coaching staff. I thought Al Golden called a fantastic game. Now, he didn't have to do much because he could send 4 and his guys could get home, and Riley Mills wasn't even there, their sack leader, and they were still able to get home. I don't know if they're going to have that same consistency against Penn State. We've seen this with Georgia all year, man. Their O-line, that we'll talk about them later. Their O-lines, they got to figure something out there. They got whooped all year long. You got a coin? Actually.
There's no coin to be flipped here.
Hold on.
There's no coin to be flipped.
I got a $50 piece.
Don't do this. Don't do this.
Heads or tails? Heads or tails?
I ain't picking one for you. You pick one. This is for you. This isn't for me.
Okay, well, it was Penn State anyway.
Okay.
So, I mean, regardless.
I'm FaceTiming you from the stadium when Notre Dame wins. I'm telling you that right now.
Well, I did say this since you brought this up. You know Notre Dame's going to lose now because you're going to be there.
Yeah, right? You said that to me yesterday, and that's a crazy thing to say. That's just a crazy shout. That is an insane – that I can't believe you said that to me yesterday. I'm going to be – I will call you after the game if that does happen, and the tone will be very different.
Hey, man. You broke the streak. You broke the stigma. You should be wearing the same clothes. You should be.
What are you talking about?
Brother.
Wait, hold on.
LSU's on the heater. When LSU's on the heater, I will wear the same stuff every game day.
Yeah, but I haven't done that. And also, I've been to Notre Dame games recently, so it's not like this is some sort of change.
The last time LSU won a national title in baseball, the one day I didn't wear the same exact stuff because I had to wash it, they lost.
Yeah, I don't have that
Superstitious, man.
I don't have that same stuff on this game. I don't have that same superstition. Thankfully,
it doesn't really play into that way. I just think they're very evenly matched.
Totally.
I'm going to throw this out there too. Jeremiah Love's status does worry me.
He's going to be good. So the latest update that's come from that is Howard Cross and Jeremiah Love are good. The bigger thing with Jeremiah Love and his issues that they mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, he had the flu against Indiana, and he was still getting over it at the very end, and he was having trouble breathing during the Georgia game.
He came out with a knee injury.
No, I know, but they felt like that he could have gone from what I understood, but they felt like that it didn't make sense at that point in the game because the game was in hand.
I mean, you're up 7 with 6 minutes to go, and you didn't get your best offensive weapon, the football. You didn't feel like the game was in hand.
Let me rephrase. They didn't think that it was necessary to bring him back into the game at that point. They thought that they could, and they were getting a little bit of success, not like tremendous success, but they were getting a little bit of success.
You smell that?
Dude, they won the freaking game by multiple scores. Don't give me this shit. Don't give me the what are you talking about?
In fairness, they're up 7 with 5 minutes left to go at their own 5-yard line, and you got to get or 10-yard line. They got to get out of the red zone. You get what I'm trying to say here. Let's not act.
Well, yes, but from my understanding, what I was told that he should be fine, and also what Marcus Freeman said during his press conference.
We'll see. We shall see. There's another game here, Joe, that we need to talk about. Ohio State and Texas in the Cotton Bowl. Both of us going here with an Ohio State at least facing somebody. Neither one of us picking Texas here. Your reasons as to why you were picking Ohio State to go to a national title and beat Texas.
Plain and simple, when was the last time that we've seen Texas play a complete game against a good opponent? Sure that we can pull up the game that they played against Florida or the way that they played against Arkansas. But when they played Georgia twice, when they played Clemson, and when they played Arizona State, teams with pulses and that were going to fight for 4 quarters, they fell asleep midway through those games, despite starting strong in all of those opportunities. I am not going to touch picking Texas against a team right now that is playing through the whistle, that is playing with their hair on fire, is playing knowing that they've got nothing to lose, and has been freaking just madly attacking on every single snap. Ohio State also matchup-wise, I do not think Jahdae Barron is a great player, but at the remaining corner spots, I do not think that they match up well with the Ohio State receiving room. I also am very, very concerned knowing how poorly Texas has done trying to run the football. To stay in games, even if they took a lead in this game, I have no faith that they could close the game out. There is always going to be an opportunity for Ohio State to get back into it because they can't run the ball, and they will be seeing a run defense that is really good across the board at defending the run. Just loaded with dudes that are great run defenders. So that, for me, overall, is a bad matchup for Texas, knowing positionally and also just general vibes of how these two teams are playing.
Do you remember what we said in the beginning of the season with Ohio State?
Yes.
What was it?
What are you referencing?
Natty or bust?
Yes.
They were both in our national title game. And they had hiccups along the road. And there are parts during the season that they did not look good. They slip up to Michigan. They can't close it out against Oregon. They come back against Tennessee. We all know the story, and they blow out Oregon in the second go around. Regardless of what happens, they are the most talented team in college football. Being the most talented does not mean that you win every football game. If they lose, it doesn't mean that they're not more talented than Texas. They still are more talented than Texas is. Your reasoning lean more on I'm picking Ohio State because Ohio State's been dominant, but Texas has been pretty flawed here, and I'm with you there. I don't like going to a semifinal game here and saying it's going to be a blowout, and I don't think it's going to be. I think it'll be moderately close. I wonder what Texas team does show up. And I think Texas does have the talent that, how do I want to say it? Texas has not been playing or having the outcomes based on the talent that they have. Meaning, on paper, they should be running away from Clemson. They should be running away from Arizona State. But they don't. And that's been a season-long problem for them. I just think that you're right on this. Ohio State has way too much. I think if you take one thing away, they can attack you with other things. And I don't know if Texas has been tested. I don't want to say they haven't been tested that way, but I just don't know if they can overcome it. It will be interesting to see. I think they go for broke. I think early in the game that they're going to go for broke. If they can keep it within a 7-point game at halftime, I think the confidence build will keep this game close the entirety. I'm going to go with Ohio State for one reason. Joe, I think Will Howard has been playing much differently since that Michigan game. I think the decision-making, the confidence, and I told you this after the Tennessee win, and I saw it again after they beat Oregon. I saw an entire team rally to the guy. Now, both of us played football. It's not often that you see defensive guys getting up and going and greeting the quarterback. It rarely happens, or any offensive player for that matter. When it happened against Tennessee, okay, you're emotional, whatever. What do you make of it now that when he's making these big throws and these big plays that dudes are all like defensive guys are like, hell yeah, let's go. I think that he's hitting a little bit different stride. Now, he's not the pro that everybody, I'm not saying he's going to be a all-world pro or anything like that. But I've seen experienced quarterbacks in college football consistently win national titles. We saw one last year. We saw the year before. We saw the year before that. Experienced quarterback play matters. The question ultimately becomes is that Ohio State we have seen the aura of Ohio State. Can they get over that hump? Can they get back to what their talent is? Well, Joe, who says Texas can't? Now, they probably won't, but who says that they can't? They play up and down the level of their opponent. That's how I see them. But I'm going to take Ohio State by 7 here.
I think they cover more than that. Let me wait 1 second.
I think it's 6.5.
Yeah, wait. I just want to have the line on Bet Online.
Pretty sure that I'm going to take that to Ohio State to win and to cover.
Yeah, the Ohio State obviously to win. The current line is. Damn it! I just had it. It is 5.5.
Oh,
so I mean, I would even tease that to 7. I think this is gonna be a 10+ point victory.
What do they know that? What do they know that we don't? Because they're watching the same game.
No, hold on. Wait, hold on. I highly, and I know I'm not sure. This isn't shade thrown at you. This is just generally. I highly dislike the premise of what do the books know that we don't. That line moved, and when the line moves, it means sharp money's on that. So if the sharp money's on that, that means that they're on our side, that they think that Ohio State's going to cover. Vegas is wrong all the time. So just because the line is
a lot too.
Yes and no. I do not see a world unless Texas wins. I do not see a world that they cover that and this game is close.
Of course, if they win, they're going to cover.
Right. No, but I'm saying that I don't see them losing by 3. I see them losing by 7, likely more, like 10+ points. I would tease the shit out of that. If you can get a different line, I would do that.
Again, about this Ohio State team, I'm going to repeat this until I'm blue in the face. I have visibly, up close and personal, seen offenses that have hit massive strides. I literally would sit at a practice behind Jaden Daniels throwing to Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. a year ago. Literally. Joe, I'm watching the same thing. Maybe not with better quarterback play with Will Howard. I'm watching the same type of receivers. I know for a fact I am. My eyes are not deceiving me here. I know what I'm seeing. So we'll see. It's going to be very interesting. I will say this. For Texas's sake, Joe, they can get to Will Howard. They keep this game close because if they
it's a fair point. It's a fair
point. If they can get to him and they can rattle him, like Ohio State fans are on another high right now, and I understand as to why they are, right? Like I get it. I understand it. But brother, I'm just going to tell you, they can get after a quarterback better than anybody in the country. Dude, Texas is flawed offensively. They're not flawed all around defensively. Maybe boundary corner, it is what it is. But, man, defensively, they're a really good football team. They're better than Oregon.
No, and that's where the credit comes in.
Oregon defensively.
That's where the credit comes into play and what we talked about yesterday, like why there still is a world that Texas can win this game. It's not like, it's not like the matchup between Boise State and Penn State. That's not what this is. But just knowing their weaknesses and the troubles that they've had, it's easy to pick Ohio State, and it's also easy to pick them to cover. So if anyone wants to make a little money, I'm taking Ohio State to cover that 5.5, and I am not looking back.
I feel you there. All right. So, Joe, let's recap some of these playoff teams. So, what are some of these teams that lost in the playoffs? What do they have to do to get back to that? I don't want to even say national title run. The only one that really has been on national title runs lately has been Georgia. But some of these other teams, let's start off with Georgia, okay? Because Georgia's coming off a loss to Notre Dame. Carson Beck goes down in the SEC championship game. I'm sure it's a little bit of a deflating season for them. They've been up and down, up and down. They win the SEC, but they go up against Notre Dame in New Orleans. A lot of adversity struck their team in New Orleans, whether it be the attack or Kirby's dad passing and or just being overall a QB, not taking anything away from Notre Dame. But specifically talking about Georgia, what do you think that Georgia's got to do to get back to the dominance that they've had over the last couple of years?
Well, the easiest thing to identify is their offensive inconsistencies, and the biggest thing for their offensive inconsistency has been them having issues running the football. And that is a really complex problem for them. It's not just, hey, they don't have the running backs. It's the running back production hasn't been there. They were a little bit banged up throughout the season with Trevor Etienne's availability. Their offensive line, the interior guys were also banged up and inconsistently available. And when they were on the field, they also weren't playing at a high enough level. The largest thing that I'm focused on is they have to find a run game in the offseason. And this is such an elaborate problem that is fixable. It's fixable for any football team. There are going to be a lot of new faces on their offensive line. And there are two directions that can swing. It either swings in the direction of they take a step backward, having to play some younger players and inexperienced players, or they take a huge step forward because guys with a lot of potential are taking over for players that were struggling. I don't know who those guys are exactly because there's a mixed match of opportunities. Does Dylan Fairchild and do Tate Radledge? Tate Radledge is going to go to the NFL because he's a redshirt senior, but does Dylan Fairchild, does he declare? Is he going to be a part of this upcoming class? Finding a running game is extremely, extremely critical. They had some bright spots with Nate Frazier, but who's that next backup? Assuming Trevor Etienne goes on in the NFL, who is that next running back that's going to be contributing behind him? I feel like that there is a lot of potential, Blake, for Gunnar Stockton to take a step forward based on the little glimpses that we saw in the small sample size of those two games, that there's a lot of potential for him to be that Stetson Bennett type quarterback, to be that guy that lives and breathes the program because he's from the area. He just knows the vibe and the energy that he needs to bring to Athens. All that's there. Those boxes are checked, and they just got a premier receiver that we hyped up yesterday in Zachariah Branch. But it all comes down to their run game because it feels like everything else, I can assume their defense is going to be great. I can assume that passing attack is going to be there and be a bit more improved. It all comes down to the one thing that we talked about a ton this year, which was running the football.
Well, not only that, to add on to that, Noah Thomas seems to be trending towards Georgia, the Texas A&M wide receiver. We'll see. I don't know if you're rewatching this on video and he commits somewhere else. It just seems at the moment he's trending per 247. You go and get Zachariah Branch. So you've gone and gotten receivers. Joe, here's the thing that nobody wants to really talk about. We talk about the interceptions from Carson Beck. We talk about some of the inconsistencies on their offensive line and run game. You're right. Joe, they led the SEC in drops. Like, it's not just running the football. Even when they were having explosive plays, they would get dropped. Like, look at the game against Notre Dame. Like, Dylan, the person that was most excited about the touchdown that that Cash had on the wheel route was Dylan Bell. Like, I mean, you have a hybrid tight end out on the boundary trying to, like, what are you doing? So they went out and got receivers. You're right about what's going on along their offensive line, though. Joe, I don't know if it's really that fixable. Because you're going from that much of experience to inexperience. You didn't go in the portal and get anybody. Either, number one, you have to hope and pray that you developed at a really high level, and maybe they have. I mean, look, man, Georgia's number one, number two in the recruiting at 23, 24, 25. I think they were third or fourth this year for what it's worth. They've always recruited well along the offensive line. How do they develop there is going to be a big deal. They cannot have offensive success without being able to run in between the tackles. They can't. It's how they won a national title in 22. Quite frankly, it's how they won a title in 23. It will be very interesting to see how all of this takes place. Now, they have been beat up by the injury bug a lot the last two seasons. A lot. I don't know what's going on there. Something's got to change. I mean, they're more beat up than any team in the country, Joe. I mean, like, look, you had both guards that were out at times. You had a center that you had to replace. You had a tackle that you had to – Xavier Truss comes out of the Notre Dame game. They were beat up this year, and they've been beat up. The question ultimately becomes, do you need to go stylistically different? And is Gunnar Stockton your guy? Is it going to be Puglisi? I don't know. They gotta take a deep look at a lot of things that they've done. And number one is probably the running game, but drops at wide receivers got to be a big deal. I'm not worried about them defensively. Never will.
Right. They're always going to figure it out. If their defense is bad, something's freaking wrong. Well, like, there's a real problem happening.
I mean, Joe, they lost both. There are moments and times this season they lost both of their best defensive linemen and still wouldn't allow points. That's how, bro, C.J. Allen came in last year based off of an injury and didn't come off the field. That's how deep they are, and defensively. Offensively, they have had issues, and that's going to continue to be their issue.
Before we move on to the next team, I think the way that you framed something with how they used to run the football and how it really was the catalyst for their offensive success. I would even go as simpler of what I described and what we're both describing. They need to get back to what used to work. You know, they need to hit the reset button, and they need to look back at what was their identity that got them to this point offensively. And it was running the football. It was building the offense off of running the football. In Carson Beck's first year as a starter last year, and when he played tremendously versus this past year where I brought up the point where it felt like he was playing hero ball and that Mike Bobo was trying to turn him into this first round pick that, you know, he's a great player or was a great player, but was asking him to do too much. Get back to the basics of what made this team great. And I think that with Gunnar Stockton, there's more of a possibility of that. And maybe there's going to be less being inside their head on how they're game planning and how they're approaching attacking opponents. I'd be curious to know who's the leading back. Does Nate Frazier take a huge step forward being a freshman this year? And does that offensive line get figured out? But they got to keep running the damn ball.
Well, I got to be real with you. There's an NFL GM. You know that my relationship to him. I'll just say this. He was texting me during that entire game, begging and pleading for Nate Frazier, who was the one that was running the ball the most effectively to be in that game. The kid's a baller. I mean, he had the most success because he puts his head down and he runs you over. I felt like Etienne was a little worried about getting hit. You know, look, the fumble was a big deal. I mean, he got hit in those ribs again, which he had fractured early in the season.
No, it did.
Excuse me.
Frazier showed a lot of good things, though, for being a freshman.
He's got to stop fumbling the football, and I think he'll figure that out. All right. Joe, another blue blood here that we need to talk about. Oregon did finish the season and not the way that they probably obviously wanted to in the Rose Bowl, but it shouldn't take away from the season that the Oregon Ducks had year one in the Big Ten. I ask you, though, what does Oregon have to do to take that next step? I mean, look, for all intents and purposes, for what it's worth, they got beat by the national championship runner-up twice last year. They're in the playoff this year. They've taken a step every single year. What do they have to do to take that next step going into next season?
Well, that's what's very promising about Dan Lanning and this regime is that it's been a multi-year process. He hasn't been there that long, and he's also really young. It's his first time being a head coach. Knowing the recruiting that he has produced and the guys that he's brought in, and you look at the depth chart of this team, it is loaded with, I see freshmen in the 2 deep at so many position groups and guys that I know that were high 4 stars and 5 stars that could step up and make an impact. I think it's a little too simple just to say like, hey, they've got a lot of seniors on defense that are going to be graduating that they need to replace. Yes, I feel like that is a given. We will determine and find out how things turn around. But on offense, there's a number of players that are juniors that could come back or they could go to the NFL draft. But the biggest position group that I think is going to be so critical for them taking this next step forward and staying and riding off of this progressive momentum that they have is figuring out who that next core of receivers are that you can rely on. Last year with Bo Nix, it was Troy Franklin and it was Tez Johnson. This year, it was Evan Stewart and it was Tez Johnson. Tez Johnson's likely gone. Evan Stewart's a junior. Maybe he comes back. But who is going to step up in this offense that Will Stein knows how to orchestrate and operate to such perfect degree that they're going to maybe improve? I know that Dante Moore, seeing what he did as a true freshman at UCLA, I know he's got the goods. I know that there is a level of play that he can bring to this offense that Dillon Gabriel couldn't because he's physically limited compared to a guy like Dante Moore. So there is a lot more upside for attacking downhill and being aggressive and using more in the run game, all of those things. But we need to find out who are the receivers that are going to step up. Is it DeCorian Moore? Is a guy like Jurion Dickey, who was highly regarded as a recruit? Who are those next guys that can eventually become premier players?
I think DeCorian Moore is going to be special, but I got to go opposite of you. Joe, I've seen 2 quarterbacks be moderately really good under Will Stein in back-to-back years. So what? You got in a close defensive game against Ohio State. You got to be able to win those games too. Joe, quite frankly, you had a team that could not run the football, line up and bust you in the mouth the last 2 times that you played them. Let's call it what it is. I saw Penn State and Ohio State mess you up in the running game. That's not an opinion. It's a fact. And you and I talked about this a lot throughout the season. Now, I look at Elijah Rushing. I look at Aiden Breland. I look at a lot of these guys that they've gotten out of high school that they're developing, bringing up in the system. I get all of that. Now you got to go show me the development piece. Joe, the God's honest truth. Now, I know Jeremiah Smith went off on you and all this kind of stuff. Penn State ran all over you. Joe, you're talking about an offense that can barely bust a grape running the football against SMU at home. Same thing happened with Boise State. Joe, there were times and moments against Boise State, Penn State could barely bust a grape. They ultimately did at the end when Singleton broke off the long run. Well, good on them. But the bottom line remains, for me, the last 2 seasons, what have happened? You got too leaky in the defensive run game. Look, I know that you're recruiting well there. I get it. But if you're asking me, what do I trust more? So what? You're in a dogfight with a really good defense. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do that. Joe, I think that they're building an identity defensively that's taking a little bit longer than maybe they've anticipated. They've recruited at a high level. It's weird to say this because you look at them and statistically they're in the top 15, top 20 when it comes to defensive rankings. But, Joe, you can turn on any game, and we both can look against Penn State, Ohio State. What won them the game? Joe, they're trying to battle back in the game 2 weeks ago, and Ohio State, who cannot run the ball, they're busting long runs all over you. Henderson has a long run for a touchdown, and I'm not saying he's the slowest running back, but it's not like he's the most explosive running back in the country. Like, what are we doing here? Joe, I got to be real with you. I fully figure and feel that they're going to get things figured out offensively. Till Will Stein proves me otherwise, I feel like it's going to happen. I got to see you be better up front in the front 7.
That's fair. That's a fair assertion.
You want to – I told you this last offseason. I'm going to preface it again here tonight. You ready? All 4 teams in last year's playoff, all 4 teams in this year playoff, what do they all have in common? What? Every single one of them. They stopped the run at an effective rate. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State. They all are ruthless at stopping the running game. You want to take that next step to national championship status? It's what you got to do. It's what all the champions do. Defensively, you can't run the ball on them. They make you one-dimensional.
I agree with you on that, but the one thing that I feel optimistic for that is, you remember like the past 2 signing days, we've done videos on this talking about the defensive tackle recruits that they've brought in. I have a feeling that we're going to see a different version of that.
We very well may. We very well may.
Right. There's no clear answer to that question, and it could go in the swing in the complete opposite direction. They got to replace Derek Harmon and Jordan Birch. Mateo Uyunglele comes back, who had a phenomenal year as a pass rusher, not as much as a run defender. He's still a great player overall. He's more known as a pass rusher. Who do they have in the interior? And, maybe there are guys that are able to step up that were a part of, those freshman classes that we really, really hyped up. Like Aiden Breland was somebody that we talked about a ton, who I think could be a really, really good player for them. And Elijah Rushing, too, is another player who could end up being really freaking good for them. Those former 4-stars and 5-stars need to step up, and that goes in line with what you're saying.
We'll see here. Another team here, Tennessee. So, Joe, Tennessee, for what it's worth, I know they went into Columbus and got blown out. But when I look at Tennessee, look, man, they made the playoffs. Now, they had a favorable schedule. They were able to overcome some things, and they made the playoff. But Dylan Sampson's no longer going to be there. And ironically, what's funny is now you saw a team who's going to have to figure out things at receiver. And if Nico could go on the road at a very hostile environment and win you a football game, if Tennessee's going to continue to have this success, what do they have to do to overcome some of these things? What does Tennessee have to do to get back to a playoff?
I think that this one is really, really simple, because the bones of this team being really successful, I mean, it's there. They had a lot of depth on their defensive line, which is what they leaned on. They have a budding secondary, and I'm a big fan of Jermod McCoy. That kid is really, really talented for some of the plays that he was able to make this year in the SEC. Plain and simple, Nico needs to take the leap like Hendon Hooker did. Hendon Hooker showed us his first year where he stepped in and he was competing with Joe Milton, and he played a little bit that first year and finished the season as the starter. There are a lot of positives, but there was still some inconsistency. And a lot of people were kind of wondering, like, man, can Hendon Hooker be that guy? Can he be that guy that steps up and plays to his potential? He's this guy with this big arm. He's a good athlete. Could he go on to be a first-round pick if it all plays out? And if it wasn't for that injury at the end of the year, he was going to win the Heisman. And Tennessee might have gone to the college football playoff if they didn't lose steam at the end of the year, because he took the step forward, because he learned how to play within the system better, and he was being tactilely aggressive. He knew how to be aggressive in the right ways to help his team succeed. Jalen Hyatt, who's a good player, hasn't done anything in the NFL, wins the Blitnikoff because Hendon Hooker sets him up to succeed. So as much talent as there could be,
he scored 4 touchdowns versus Bama. Let's not
forget. Right. But like what I'm getting at here is that good quarterbacks tend to make good receivers appear to be great. Nico needs to take that step. Nico needs to and can take that step to being a premier quarterback in the country and to win a Heisman Trophy. I'm not saying he needs to win the Heisman, but he needs to live up to the potential. There's a lot of this year where we were hoping that he would get there, and it looked like in the first couple games when they were playing nobodies, but it didn't show up when they were playing the big dogs. He's got to take that step forward. That is the hugest thing for me, Blake.
I always find it ironic when coaches have one style of play, meaning Josh Heupel's was hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. To last year and this year, they wanted to slow everything down. They wanted to run the ball and play with defense or win games with defense. that shows me a lack of confidence that you have in quarterbacks. Now, we mentioned it about Nico. I mean, we mentioned about Joe Milton, right? Oh, Joe Milton, Joe Milton this, Joe Milton that. Nobody was willing to say the same thing about the trust factor that Heupel clearly has or doesn't have, or the lack thereof that he has in Nico. Receivers were not good enough. So it's not all on Nico.
Oh, no, I'm not saying it's all on him, but I'm just.
No.
Okay,
I know. Hold on. They got to get better everywhere offensively. I thought they ran the ball moderately well with Dylan Sampson, and they can run the ball very well. The problem is, man, you got to get back to you. All this other BS that you were trying to do, go into the offseason, become yourself again. You're right. Hendon Hooker going down was very tragic. You got to a playoff this year, but you didn't get to the playoff this year by being yourself. We talked about all year, Notre Dame. Why is Notre Dame not, why are they fumbling here and there? And why is this not looking right or whatever? They got away from being themselves. Stop trying to be something you're not. If Nico is your guy, then you go out there and you do what you got to do. I get it's what you had to do to win football games. It almost got you beat against Florida, and it sure as shit got you beat against Arkansas. It ultimately got you beat against Ohio State. Because if everybody wants to tell me, Joe, what did they start having success in? They come out in the second half, and everybody deleted these tweets on Twitter because they're like, oh, if Tennessee comes out here in the second half and they score, it's going to be a ball game here. Okay, cute. Joe, they wanted to run the football and play good defense when they're down 2 scores. You got away from being yourself. Here's the truth. Nico's footwork's got to get better. He's got to be a better decision maker. He does have the skills and the talent. Joe, he's a horrible decision maker. Horrible.
I also think that it's being overly coy too. It plays into it. And this is what I'm talking about. Is like it is one of the biggest detriments to a quarterback's improvement is when they're afraid to take chances. Bryce Young's a perfect example in the NFL. He was so timid, and then now he's just letting it all go, and he's playing great football.
When you're second in the SEC in drops, what's he supposed to do?
Oh, I'm sure that maybe played into it a little bit, but I think he's just young. This is why I'm not saying like Nico's the reason why they were bad. That's not the way I'm framing it. I think that Heupel, this is more on Heupel than it is on Nico. Let me reframe that a second here. Heupel needs to help him get there. It's on his shoulders for him developing, him improving. He's supposed to be this guy that gets the most out of these talented quarterbacks. That is what's supposed to be the biggest part here. And he hasn't had it since Hendon Hooker.
Well, you're also talking about a 5th-year quarterback. Speaking of experienced quarterbacks, like we talked about earlier, you're also talking about a 5th-year quarterback. I think they got to go back to being themselves, man. That's just me. All right, wrapping it up here. Arizona State did make the playoffs, and we are talking about teams of what they got to do to get back to the playoff. And your question to me was, what do they got to do to be a national title contender? That go recruit better players.
All right, come on, man. They got a competitive roster here. Like,
Joe,
let's not act like
they're
they
not
don't
going to
have
win a national title.
I'm not saying that they're going to win a national title. But for them to go and let's rephrase it this way. For them to win a playoff game,
get in the first round and get matched up with somebody favorable like the 12th seed or BYU.
I think that there's a little bit more life to them being competitive next year and improving. And they've got youth on defense. They're not like just shoving out a bunch of seniors to the NFL this year or just guys that are moving on from the program. Cam Scadaboo, as impactful as he was, I don't think that I'd be too worried about losing him because I look at what's far more impactful for the future of a team.
Quarterback
is having a premier young quarterback and a premier young receiver. Jordan Tyson was unavailable for the Texas game, who was a 1,000-yard receiver. Imagine if he played in that game against Texas, what the outcome could have been. But Sam Leavitt has the goods. That kid is freaking talented. He's got the arm. He's got the athleticism. He was evading pressure that should have gotten home on him. Those Texas defensive linemen were getting after his ass. They could not block those Texas defensive linemen. and he was surviving. He was living to see more time to find and make plays. I think that the key for them is that duo of Tyson and Levitt to take the leap from being promising young players to premier impactful guys. And then the last part is they got to find a pass rush. We talked about this a lot this playoff and down the stretch. They were one of the worst teams in havoc rate, in pressures, in tackles for loss. They had a decent run defense statistically. I think they were one of the better run defenses in the country. I think they were top 50, but they gotta get a pass rush. They gotta get after dudes, and that's not going to be something that's going to be easily accomplishable in one off season.
Joe, with the chaos that we saw in the Big 12, I don't know. You're right. I mean, have a really good quarterback, and they do have it with Levitt. Levitt was getting out of pressures and escaping from guys like Colin Simmons, and it was very impressive. Some of the things he did was highly impressive. You can't take it away from him. Cam Scatterbo is the reason that they almost clipped Texas. And when you take that level of playmaker off the field, it's a big deal. It doesn't stop me from not remembering when Cam Scatterbo went down and was injured. You lost 2 football games. I mean, he's unavailable and you lose. So I think they're going to have to find a more established run game with somebody else not named Cam Scatterbo, number one. But defensively, Joe, they were 87th in the country in passing yards allowed. They let a lot of teams throw the ball all over them. And so they're just going to have to continue to develop, and hopefully they land some guys in the portal and they go from there. That's how I see it.
I just think to round this out that they're in the Big 12 where there's a lot of inconsistency and there was a lot of chaos this year. I think that Kenny Dillingham is the perfect guy to lead the conference.
I agree.
I think he is built to be consistently good in that conference, the way that they won this year.
I agree. I mean, but look, I'm going to say this. I can't believe I'm about to say it. Colorado is lingering.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Looking into 2025 here, my Big 12 champion, if you had to put a gun to my head in January, and my opinion can change, I'm picking Colorado to win it. I believe that much.
I don't think that's a crazy take. I mean, for what we've talked about.
Well, and it's not only that. They've gone out and gotten big SEC defensive linemen. They've got a Big Ten edge rusher. I mean, look, man, I fully believe that they can win it. So
yeah.
All right, we do have a super chat from Elks here. He says, "Where's all the Oregon fans? Bevo's bodyguard."
Bevo's bodyguard got pissed at us a couple weeks ago, and I think he stopped tuning in because we were shitting on Texas too much. I mean, God forbid that we were realistic about Texas. Oregon fans, though, yeah, I mean, they've been a little quiet.
With Bevo that I've noticed. You ready?
Okay.
When we're right about something about Texas, for about a week and a half, 2 weeks, he doesn't show up.
I mean, I gotta get it with
what are they going to come in here and say? You almost got clipped by Arizona State. What are you going to say?
I know there was no talk of that. We had a lot of Texas fans who watched the video that we put out yesterday, the segment. We had 12,000 Texas fans. That was the most watched Texas video that we've ever put out. I was shocked by how many.
And they said what exactly?
Not very pleasant things.
Of course they didn't. Joe, they almost got clipped by Arizona State here, brother.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
All right. I don't know. All right. We'll see y'all again on
Wednesday.
See y'all then. Y'all have a good one. Peace.